Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, and in today's video, we're talking about something a little unusual, a title that I'm very excited about, but I absolutely do not recommend you go and read. Let's talk about it. Last Thursday, this trailer dropped for The Red Ranger Becomes an Adventurer in Another World. Link in the description, and I know what you're thinking. Traben, that title doesn't tell me anything. What is this story about? Obviously, this is an isekai, but instead of taking someone from our world and transporting them into a fantasy world or a horror world or whatever it might be, we've taken a character from one genre, we're planting them into another. Have you ever gotten the feeling like a piece of media was created specifically for you? The last time this happened to me was when Wagaki Band performed with Amy Lee from Evanescence, link in the description. It has nothing to do with BookTube, it's just cool. Recently, I've been getting very much into lit RPG and that whole genre, and I feel like oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, these isekai titles are essentially lit RPG. So lit RPG is a subgenre where the characters within the fantasy world in some form or fashion understand the rules of that fantasy world. They understand things like stats and power levels and things like that, and they do creative things. They manipulate it to reach a certain end. So a good example would be How to Defeat a Demon Lord in 10 Easy Steps. So in this story, we're very much Zelda themed. There is a prophecy. A character gets reincarnated as the hero every so many years. And this cycle, that hero hasn't shown up yet. So someone decides they're going to become the hero, even though they weren't born the hero, and they're manipulating the rules of the world that they're very well aware of, to reach that goal. I find that isekais frequently fall under the lit RPG umbrella. So on the surface level, all an isekai requires is that someone travels from one dimension to another dimension. From a narrative standpoint, a lot of isekais are lit RPG because the person who's being transported into the world knows about RPG mechanics or is able to exploit them in some way because of something they brought from the other world, like a smartphone or something like that. To infuse the idea of a Super Sentai character, the Red Ranger, going from his world into a fantasy world and treating it like an isekai, I think is a really novel approach. I'm not sure I've heard of another title where it wasn't someone from our world or a very close approximation of our world traveling into the other world. And it's essentially a full manga crossover, right? So we're saying this genre and this genre, we're going to mash them up. And it leads to some really funny moments. Even within the trailer, you saw the mage character, the wizard character, freaking out about the explosions that are happening behind the Red Ranger. Like, where is this coming from? How is he making this transformation without using mana? Where does his power come from? How does it work? And if you read the first couple of chapters of the manga, you'll see that the wizard is very much invested in finding out the root of this person's power. They are able in this world to bring up their stats, but when they bring up the Red Ranger stats, they're completely different. Meanwhile, the Red Ranger is coming from a Sentai series that's all based on friendship and unity. The villains are like the relationship enders or something like that, and so it's very heavily themed as you get in these Sentai series, especially like in the 90s and early 2000s. I feel like the themes were really obvious and really like hammered in. So you have really funny situations that arise from the interaction of the two worlds. There's a point where the Red Ranger summons the combined weapon of the team, and he's got enough people to like pilot it essentially, or enough people to arm it, but their hearts aren't together. They're not working together, and it's not until later in the fight when these characters who are squabbling start seeing each other's perspective that the gun is even able to work. And so the mechanisms of his world are vastly different from the mechanisms of the fantasy world. And as a result, even though he's considered a B rank fighter right now, because that's the way the fantasy world works. He is very strong because he's able to do things that nobody else on this planet is even capable of. There's also a moment in the second chapter. No, it's later in the first chapter. So there's a moment late in chapter 1 where he does summon the mecha, and I was wondering if that was going to be something that happens. So they're fighting this giant dragon, and he summons the mecha and talks about how it's his bond with the wizard that allows it to function, and how now that their purposes align and they are a team, that it can work and it can activate, and it's just a lot of fun. I love the Red Ranger character. I love how enthusiastic he is and how off-putting it is for the wizard. So she is very much like, you need to settle down. Like, how is any of this working? Where do these explosions come from? She's incredibly frustrated because he keeps on burning all the loot drops. So in her world, of course, it's like a fantasy RPG style thing. You get items from the monsters that you defeat. So everything, because he does the pose at the end and then there's an explosion behind him, everything becomes therefore worthless. So money is now an issue. I'm on chapter 3, and they're talking about now money is an issue because they can't get any supplies to then, purchase more goods or purchase food. We are getting some good character moments with the wizard as well. She talks about her backstory, how her father was discredited, and it's her whole goal to become like the #1 wizard in the world, and to spread the joy of magic, to always use magic to help people, which becomes a very important plot point later on when they're dealing with some people that they would rather not be teaming up with. She still says, I'm going to use magic to protect those in need, regardless of my personal feelings. So I do feel, at least with the leads, we have some strong characterization. It's, for both, it's over the top. But I think that that's rather the point, right? The Super Sentai is like super energetic and super upbeat and super hype all the time. His transformation device does like the jingle and like does all the yelling out the attack names, that kind of thing. And then the wizard has her very like tragic backstory and her purpose for self-improvement. I do have a little bit of issue with some of the humor, as I do with a lot of these titles, but for this one in particular, because of the subject matter, because I'm enjoying the other elements of it so much, I'm willing to put up with the like weird sexual jokes that are in there, the fact that the wizard dresses very provocatively for no reason. I'm willing to look past that because I'm enjoying the action and the interplay between the two leads. Here's the problem. In Japan, The Red Ranger Becomes an Adventure in Another World is published in Square Enix's Shonen Gangan. And as a result, because Square Enix owns the rights, the only way to read it stateside, as it doesn't have a physical release, is to use app. Those of you who aren't aware of the current landscape of digital comics, I was not aware that this is kind of the direction we were heading, but Manga Up is essentially microtransactions, the manga experience. Each of the chapters of this manga are split up into like 5 different sections, and then for each of those sections you have to pay a currency in the app in order to read it. One of the currencies replenishes, so eventually I'll be able to read the whole series. But there's also a premium currency, and as you get farther and farther into a comic title on this app, the more and more likely it is that they're using that premium currency that you can only replenish by buying. I am not opposed to buying a physical book. I am rather opposed to buying digital content because the things I buy on Manga Up are only going to exist for me as long as that app remains functional, which again, given the current landscape of the digital space, could be a few years or a couple of months. It could implode soon. Additionally, for Manga Up specifically, the UI on this app is garbage. It is hard to find anything. It's very distracting with how it lists titles. They're all just kind of like arranged in an array. The only reason I've been able to find the Red Ranger becomes an adventure in another world so consistently is because it's currently headlining their adventure subcategory. So I can click on adventure and find it, but it doesn't even, as far as I can tell, it doesn't even have a section where it's like, this is what you were previously reading. Do you want to jump back in? So I am reading this title very slowly because it appeals very much to me, but I can't in all good conscience like recommend someone uses this app. It's absolutely terrible and I hate it. My hope is that this gains some traction. I don't know if Square Enix has a physical comic book line, but I know other Shonen Gangan titles have gotten physical releases. I'm pretty sure that's where Full Metal Alchemist was serialized. So while Square Enix might not have its own American distribution setup, they might go to an outside source and have them publish the title. And that's what I'm hoping happens. I would assume someone's going to pick it up. It hits enough of a cross-sectional between the Sentai fans and the Tokusatsu fans and then the Isekai fans and then just the general manga fantasy world fans that it could do well in the States. Plus, as far as I've read, it is genuinely funny, especially if you are familiar with the tropes of either one of these settings. But definitely recommend checking out the trailer for this show and maybe seeing if it gets picked up next January. I would not recommend going through the laborious process of reading it off of this app and dealing with this microtransaction garbage. So, just something cool I saw recently, really excited for it. I'm going to continue slowly reading it when I remember that it exists. But yeah, due to the way that you have to get on this app and read it incredibly slowly, it might be something that slips from my radar despite my excitement over it. And that's our video for today. It's a short one, just something I was excited about and wanted to talk about briefly. Let me know down in the comments if you're excited for this title, if you've seen something similar before, any other isekais that are mashing up two genres. I'm very interested if that is something that's happened before. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. Hitting that like button is the #1 thing that's going to get these videos out to other people. I hope your reading journey is going well, and until the next one, take care.